What is the difference between a healthy pride in a life well lived and a dangerous pride that can lead to our downfall? It's a question many of us face as we get older, a fine line that can be difficult to see. Hello, I'm John from Texas, United States, your friend and narrator of real stories. Stay with me until the end of this incredible story. Want to see your story told here? Then get in touch with us. This is a story about that very line, and about a man named Walter. Pride, for Walter, was not just a feeling. It was the very architecture of his soul. At 77, he lived in the same small, sturdy house he had bought with his own two hands nearly 50 years ago. He had been a carpenter, a man who built things that lasted, and his home was a testament to that creed. It was a physical manifestation of his life's philosophy. Be self-sufficient, be strong, and never ever be a burden. His wife Mary had understood his pride, but since she had passed, the house had become both his sanctuary and his secret shame. To his two successful children, Mark and Jennifer, Walter was a rock. He was the stoic patriarch who had always provided, the man who was doing just fine in his retirement. When they visited, he would put on a performance of comfortable solvency. He would insist on paying when they went out for lunch, pulling a crisp $20 bill from his wallet, as if it were one of many. They saw what he wanted them to see, and in their love and respect for his lifelong independence, they never thought to look closer. But behind the closed door of his sturdy house, a different story was unfolding. A story of quiet, desperate poverty. The truth was, Walter was broke. His small pension and savings were being devoured by the relentless inflation of property taxes, utilities, and food. His pride, the cornerstone of his identity, would not allow him to confess this to his children. Admitting his failure felt worse than the hunger pangs he now experienced most afternoons. So he managed. He became a master of a secret frugal economy. Lunch was often a single piece of toast. Dinner was a can of soup, watered down to last 2 nights. The heat in the house was a luxury he rarely indulged in, even on the coldest winter nights. This kind of hidden struggle is more common than many of us think. Do you know someone who, out of pride, has had trouble admitting they need help, whether it's financial, physical, or emotional? Or have you ever been in that position yourself? Share your thoughts on this difficult subject in the comments. The constant stress was a poison seeping into his health. He lost weight, his already lean frame becoming gaunt. A persistent, anxious tremor developed in his hands, a cruel irony for a man who had made his living with their steadiness. And sleep, the one free comfort left to him, became a battlefield. His insomnia was relentless, his nights spent staring at the ceiling, his mind a frantic abacus calculating and recalculating the few dollars he had left. His prayers to God became strained, tinged with a confused anger. "Lord," he would whisper, "I worked hard. I was honest. How did I end up here? How do I fix this without sacrificing my dignity?" He didn't ask for a handout. He just asked for a way out that didn't involve the humiliation of asking his own children for help. To him, that confession would be the final, ultimate failure. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday, tucked inside a windowed envelope with an ominous red border. It was a final notice from the county tax office. He was delinquent, and if the full amount was not paid within 30 days, a lien would be placed on his house. The one thing he had built, the one thing that was truly his. The letter shook in his trembling hands. This wasn't about skipping a meal anymore. This was about losing everything. He sat at his kitchen table, the letter laid out before him like a death certificate for his independence. The number on the page was impossible, a figure as vast and unreachable as the moon. He felt a wave of dizziness, the room seeming to tilt. He was an old man, alone, with no safety net. His pride had become his executioner. It had backed him into a corner from which there was no escape. He thought about calling his son, Mark, a successful accountant. Mark could solve this problem with a single check, but the shame was a physical barrier in his throat. He imagined the conversation, his voice small and cracking, admitting his failure. He imagined the look on Mark's face, not of anger, but of pity, and the thought of that pity was more than he could bear. He thought of his daughter, Jennifer, a kind-hearted teacher. She would shower him with love, but her concern would be a constant, gentle reminder of his own inadequacy. He couldn't do that to them. He couldn't tear down the monument of the strong father he had spent a lifetime building. He sat there for hours as the sun went down, the house growing dark around him. The letter on the table seemed to glow with a malevolent light. He felt trapped, cornered by his own life. The phone on the wall was a silent tormentor, a lifeline he was too proud to grasp. To pick it up would mean the end of Walter Sterling as he knew him, but to not pick it up would mean the end of his home. He rested his head in his hands, the rough calluses of a lifetime of labor feeling foreign and useless. He had built his life on the solid bedrock of self-reliance, and now that very rock was about to crumble into dust, burying him underneath it. The long night offered Walter no escape. Sleep was a distant country to which he had lost his passport. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the red-bordered letter, the numbers swimming before him, a final, damning verdict on his life's work. The house, his fortress of pride, now felt like a tomb he had built for himself. He was a castaway on the island of his own independence, and the tide was rising. In the deepest, darkest hour before dawn, when his despair was at its most complete, a memory surfaced, unbidden. It was a memory of Mary, his beloved wife, from 20 years ago. She had just come home from a major surgery, and her pride was as fierce as his own. She had refused to let the visiting nurse help her, insisting on doing everything herself, her face pale with pain and effort. He remembered sitting with her on the edge of their bed, taking her hand, and saying, "Mary, my love, letting someone help you isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you are loved. You spent your whole life taking care of this family. Now, please, let us take care of you. It's our turn. It's our blessing to do so." He had even quoted a verse from her own Bible back to her, from Galatians. "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." It's incredible how the words and wisdom of a lost loved one can come back to us just when we need them most. Have you ever had a memory of someone you've lost guide you through a difficult decision? Share that powerful moment with us in the comments. The memory struck Walter with the force of a physical blow. The hypocrisy of his own position was laid bare in the quiet darkness of the room. He was denying his own children the very blessing he had begged his wife to accept. He was so terrified of being a burden that he was refusing to let them fulfill the most fundamental law of love. His pride was not protecting his dignity. It was starving their love. It was a selfish pride, he realized, a pride that put his own image above his family's heart. For the first time, his prayer changed. It was no longer a confused plea to God. It was a simple, broken prayer of confession. "Forgive me, Lord," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Forgive my foolish pride. Give me the strength to be weak. Give me the courage to be a father who needs his children." As the first gray light of dawn filtered through the window, Walter made his decision. With a hand that trembled not from age, but from a profound and terrifying humility, he picked up the phone. He couldn't bring himself to call Mark, his son, the accountant. The conversation would be too full of numbers. He needed a softer landing. He needed his daughter. He dialed Jennifer's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm but sleepy. "Dad, is everything okay? It's early." "I'm sorry to wake you, Jenny," he said, his voice a dry croak. I needed to hear your voice." A pause. Jennifer's instinct kicked in immediately. She could hear the fragility in his tone, a sound she had never heard before. "Dad, what is it? What's wrong?" He tried to be strong. "Oh, it's nothing, just a little paperwork trouble." But the lie crumbled. His carefully constructed dam of pride finally broke, and the truth came flooding out in a torrent of shame and fear. He told her everything: the cold house, the watered-down soup, the hidden bills. And then, his voice, dropping to a whisper, he told her about the tax notice, about the risk of losing the house. That moment of finally admitting you need help is one of the hardest and bravest things a person can do. What do you think gives someone the final push to make that call? Is it desperation or a flicker of hope? He ended his confession with the most difficult words he had ever had to say. "I need help, Jenny. I don't know what to do." He braced himself for her reaction. He expected shock, disappointment, and worst of all, pity. What he got instead was the fierce, unconditional love of a daughter. "Oh, Daddy," she said, and he could hear that she was crying, not with pity, but with a heartbroken love. "Oh, Daddy, why didn't you tell us? For how long? You've been suffering all alone." There was no "I told you so." There was no judgment. There was only a profound sorrow that he had felt he had to carry this burden by himself. "We're your family," she continued, her voice gaining strength, a protective fire igniting within her. "This is not your burden to carry alone. This is our burden. You spent your entire life taking care of us. Now it is our honor to take care of you. Do you understand me? It is our honor." Walter couldn't speak. He just held the phone, tears streaming down his own face. Tears of shame giving way to tears of overwhelming relief. The secret was out. The weight was lifted. "I'm calling Mark right now," Jennifer said, her voice full of a new, determined energy. "Don't you worry about a thing. We're on our way. We'll be there in an hour." Before he could protest, she said it again, her words a sacred vow. "We are coming, Dad. You are not alone anymore." He hung up the phone and sat there in his cold kitchen as the sun began to stream through the window. The house was the same. The threatening letter was still on the table, but everything had changed. The shame was still there, a dull ache in his heart, but it was now joined by a fragile, new feeling: hope. He had made himself vulnerable, and he had not been met with pity, but with a love so powerful it humbled him to his very core. He had spent a lifetime trying to prove his strength, and in one moment of admitting his weakness, he had discovered a love that was stronger than any fortress he could ever build. He heard a car pull into the driveway much sooner than he expected. He looked out the window to see not one, but two cars, Mark and Jennifer. They had come just as she had promised. They were his family, and he, their father, was finally ready to let them in. Walter opened the front door, and for a moment no one spoke. He saw the faces of his children, etched with a love so fierce and a sorrow so deep that it stole the air from his lungs. There was no pity in their eyes. There was only family. Jennifer rushed forward and wrapped her arms around her father's frail frame, hugging him with the strength of a lifetime of unspoken gratitude. Mark, his practical, stoic son, simply placed a hand on his father's shoulder, a gesture that conveyed more than words ever could. "Let's go inside, Dad," Mark said, his voice gentle. "Let's figure this out, together." They sat at the kitchen table, the very table where Walter had spent so many lonely nights, agonizing over his secret. But now, it was no longer a place of shame. It was a council table, with the threatening letter laid between them. They didn't see a delinquent taxpayer. They saw their father, a man who had worked himself to the bone for them, who had fallen on hard times and had been too proud to say a word. Mark, the accountant, looked at the numbers with a calm, professional eye. But he spoke with the heart of a son. "This is not a problem, Dad," he said firmly. "This is a cash flow issue, and it's an issue we are going to solve right now." This moment of a family coming together to solve a problem without blame is so powerful. What do you think is the best way for children to offer financial help to a proud parent while still preserving their dignity? Share your ideas in the comments. There were no lectures about budgeting, no I told you so's about financial planning. Instead, his children created a plan, not for him, but with him. They talked about setting up a joint account, about automating his bills, about creating a sustainable plan that would allow him to live his senior living years not just in solvency, but in comfort. And throughout the conversation, they made one thing abundantly clear. "Dad," Jennifer said, her hand covering his, "everything we have in our lives, our education, our homes, our success, was all built on the foundation you and Mom gave us. This isn't charity. This is a dividend payment on a lifetime of love. It is our turn to provide for you. It is our joy." In that moment, Walter's 77 years of carefully constructed pride did not shatter. It simply dissolved, replaced by a profound and humbling wave of gratitude. He had spent his life believing that his role was to give. He was finally learning the difficult, beautiful grace of receiving. The weeks that followed were a renaissance for Walter. With the crushing weight of his financial secret lifted, his health began to return. The constant anxiety that had fueled his insomnia was gone, and he began to sleep through the night for the first time in years. Food, once a source of anxiety, became a source of connection. His children made sure his pantry and refrigerator were always full. They started a new tradition of taking turns bringing dinner over several times a week. The house, once kept cold to save a few dollars, was now warm, filled with the aroma of roasting chicken and the sound of his grandchildren's laughter. They weren't just giving him money. They were giving him their time, their presence, their love. They were restoring his home, and in doing so, they were restoring him. He had his dignity back, but it was a new kind of dignity. It was not the brittle, lonely pride of self-sufficiency. It was the resilient, shared dignity of a man who was deeply loved, a man who was the cherished head of a family. He realized his greatest accomplishment was not the house he had built, or the money he had earned. It was the children he had raised. He had raised them on the quiet lessons of his and Mary's love story, on the principles he had learned from his Bible, principles of integrity, hard work, and honoring one's family. And now, he was seeing the fruits of that labor. His true legacy was not his financial independence, it was his children's character. Walter's realization about his true legacy is incredibly moving. What do you believe is the most important legacy a person can leave behind for their family? Is it financial security or something else entirely. His prayers to God were no longer strained. They were simple, heartfelt conversations of thanks. He saw God's grace not in a sudden windfall of money, but in the compassionate hearts of his son and daughter. He understood now that God had answered his prayers, not by solving his problem for him, but by giving him the humility to let his family solve it with him. Months later, Walter sat in his warm living room, talking on the phone with his youngest grandchild, laughing at a story about her day at school. His son, Mark, was at the kitchen table, quietly sorting through some mail, a comfortable, normal presence. The aroma of a simmering beef stew, Jennifer's contribution for the evening, filled the air. Walter looked around the room, at the sturdy walls he had built, at the photos of his smiling family, at the son who was quietly managing his affairs with love and respect. He was still in his house, still the master of his own domain, but he was no longer its lonely king. He was the beloved patriarch of a thriving, loving family. He had learned the hardest and most important lesson of his old age, that true strength is not in never needing help, but in having the courage to accept it. The story of Walter is a powerful reminder that the pride that builds a life can also become a prison at the end of it. It teaches us that asking for help is not an admission of failure, but an act of trust, an invitation for our family to show their love. It shows that the greatest legacy we can leave our children is not money, but a character that knows how to love, to give, and to honor. For all the children watching, it is a reminder to look closer, to ask the difficult questions, and to see beyond the proud facade of the strong parents we love. If this story of a family's love overcoming a father's pride has touched you, please share this message by leaving a like and subscribing to Stories Beyond 50. And now, we open this space to you. Have you ever found it difficult to ask for help or to accept it? How can families have honest conversations about the financial challenges of old age? What does it truly mean to honor our parents while still allowing them their dignity? Your wisdom is a treasure. Please share it with us in the comments below. And if you're not ready to share, but you believe in the power of family to be our greatest strength, just write the single word, family, in the comments. Let us celebrate the love that carries us through. We read and cherish every word. God bless you, and we will see you in the next story.